thank you for joining us today. This is really a continuation of our webinar series around point of care oil analysis. So today I'm actually joined by two of our on-site experts that use our MiniLab 53 system. So I have Travis Sanderson, so he's the ACP Automation Manager at ES3 in York, Pennsylvania. So Travis is a certified lubrication specialist. And I'm also joined by Chris Orr, and he's the supervisor of automation reliability at ES3, and he is LLA2 certified. So ES3 is a grocery supply and logistics company, and with everything that has been going on in 2020, in the past 6 months, really, their business has just exploded, and I thought it would be really interesting to talk about how their predictive maintenance strategies have played an important role in supporting their business in the past 6 months. So we're first going to start out with Travis. So Travis, if you could just kind of start out and tell us what the past 6 months have looked like for you guys as far as what your overall business strategy has been from a maintenance perspective in the past 6 months.
Sure. Yeah, for the last 6 months, obviously there's been a lot going on, a lot of changes. Coming off of our busy season, so in the grocery world, holidays are extremely busy, and Thanksgiving and Christmas being the highest of all of those. So we had just completed one of our record busy seasons in the last 20 years. Immediately followed that with this pandemic breaking out, followed by stay-at-home orders, followed by people not going out to eat. So the grocery market literally just exploded. Like, the distribution centers weren't able to meet the needs. I mean, anybody that's gone to the grocery store knew that it was a struggle across the United States. So yeah, strategies definitely changed. We were pushing on them pretty hard for predictive and proactive. Luckily, we've started this process before this came about, and it really allowed us to push the machine that we use to be able to deliver that product to higher levels than we've ever pushed it before. We've literally shattered every record created since this machine was put together and put in.
Wow, well, that's impressive, and also it really attests to the stuff that you have done prior to and put in place prior to make sure that you can handle this. Can you tell us a little bit about like when and why you started to care about predictive maintenance, lubricant analysis, and when it really started coming into your thinking?
Yeah, it actually started back December 23rd of 13. So back around Christmas, back in 2013, I saw the need working in a different department of our automation group. So we have a lot of robotics and automation in our system. We were seeing failures of stuff that was hitting its 12 and 15-year lifespan. Components that cost a lot of money to replace that I'd found we weren't doing any sampling against. We weren't even doing accurate changes and updates, followed by the OEMs. Were systems that we had, we were seeing failures of stuff that we weren't doing good practices against. We weren't checking our oils, and we weren't changing them like we should. It was starting to cost us a lot of money. So we had proposed the idea of the lubrication laboratory using the MiniLab, like you had said, about how we nailed down working on chemical integrity, working contaminations, trying to get it like, right now, within the next hour, can I have a sample of where we stand? So we're one of the largest automated facilities in the entire world for distribution of groceries. So every single thing we have is on a massive scale. So of our machines, we have so many duplicates of everything that if we can't see the heartbeat of it, the health of it, or how good it's doing, there's no way we could get ahead of it. So most of 14, I spent the time trying to get the approval for the money through the capital expenditures and stuff like that. We actually broke ground per se in March of 2015. So about a year and a half later, it took to get all the final approvals through. And then the physical construction took until about October of 15. So since October of 15, we've been up and running. Chris transitioned into the team with me. We went out, got our certifications to have our ground to stand on to, make sure we had our solid backing. And since then, we've kind of pushed it into a couple different articles to showcase what good reliability looks like and how even a distribution center at our level almost these days has to apply these methods.
Have you gotten much traction with that as far as other distribution centers kind of standardizing their operations based on what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so we've done a couple different articles. We've had some front covers, stuff like that to help push the face of what we're doing. And Chris has actually done an incredible job handling that over the last 3 years even. We also work with other distribution companies that use automation that started doing their samples and sending them to us. So our lab has almost become its own entity outside of even our building and our actual business. We have another automated facility that now wants to start sending their stuff to us as well. So not even just other distribution centers. We have other OEMs looking to use our local distribution center, for lubrication analysis, which is pretty neat if you think about it.
That is really cool. And be able to, you guys actually have the software capability to do that as well. The TrueView 360 software is designed to support kind of that enterprise mentality of you being a localized lab that can support several other locations. So that's great.
Yeah, it's worked out great for us.
Good. So how did you know, well, we kind of already addressed this a little bit, but feel free to elaborate, but how did you know that it was time to bring it in-house? Like, did you have a point where you were using an outside source and you wanted to bring it in-house, or did you just start in-house to begin with?
We used a couple of local professionals to find out what we had to do and how to go about it. We had a previous employee that also had worked in the lubrication field as well. Combining those two together is when we started approaching the idea. We also started using a lot of like a 6S or a TPM type strategy that allowed us to open the door to our corporate to say, we should probably bring this in-house. So working with a local lab, also working with getting our certifications, and then working with people that have been in the reliability field in the past, followed by the failures of our machines and our inability to control them were hurting us pretty drastically.
Sure.
To the point that it was getting a lot of attention, and we needed to find out a new strategy of going after this.
Sure. I remember when you and I talked probably back in the 2013, 2014 timeframe, one of your biggest obstacles was being able to have chemicals, lab grade chemicals on site. How did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so working with EHS, when you're a distribution center and you're trying to do something this abstract to what their world normally is, we ran into a lot of hurdles, which is what you're referencing. Working through them, trying to find out what the different requirements, federal requirements, stuff like that were on the different machines that we were looking to purchase, and trying to make sure we had good ways of sustainability, from beginning of life till end of life, what we did with the lubricants that we brought in, what we did with the chemicals, how they were disposed of, and how they were reclaimed.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big concern for a lot of people because chemicals are a real thing with the lab environment. So that is a concern of people. So that's good that you were able to overcome those challenges and just continue to press forward with it. So and then it's a final question, and then Chris, we'll move over to you. How did you prepare the space? You have a beautiful physical space there. So you had two challenges as far as you had to actually build the actual space and then get it ready to store laboratory grade equipment. And where your space is located, it's kind of in the middle of a floor. So how did you prepare that space?
So the biggest thing was trying to, once again, any kind of floor space in the distribution center is extremely hard to get your hands on. So when you're trying to push for a new idea that's outside of normal accepted, practices, and what we did, it took a good bit of talking and, throwing things around, making sure people understood the value behind this. So that's really how we went about getting the space located for us and getting it approved by our leaders, was to make sure they were bought into what we needed. From there, looking at climate control, looking at correct lighting, looking at separation of, like the lab you're referencing, we have a spot where everybody can go, where we pull the lubricant out of the drums, we polish it, through filters into totes. They're stored in totes. The technicians can access that at any time, 24/7, no problems at all. A lot of the reclamation of aerosols, stuff like that ends up there, a lot of the old oils, which Chris handles. But then in the back room, we have it locked down that only certain individuals in the building are allowed back there to make sure that test equipment doesn't lose calibration, is only handled appropriately, hits its marks for upkeeps and calibrations, and that the climate can be controlled that much closer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why we built it into a two-piece like that, so that all technicians could access it for the value it was going to add, but then also keep the lubrication laboratory equipment, at the level we needed it to perform at.
Yeah. Well, and you talk a lot about that spot checking and having the limited ability to the instruments. Just you guys are doing a lot of stuff that we've talked about in previous webinars of other people that are doing similar things. So in previous webinars, we've talked about Nissan, places like Nissan and Eli Lilly. I mean, you guys are just doing the exact same things where just the standard practices are just really gold star and top notch. So great job. Really good stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Sure. So Chris, just a couple questions for you because you are the guy in the lab that's doing the work and processing the samples and pushing that data out into the plant. And you and I've got a chance to work on the MiniLab 53 system with TrueView 360. So I know that just from knowing you, your background is in engineering and went to college for engineering. I went to college for chemistry, but this isn't something that we typically learn in our science classes. So could you maybe talk about how you went about getting educated about predictive maintenance and about oil analysis in general and how you got yourself up to speed to feel comfortable managing the lab?
Yeah, so when I started out in maintenance, I didn't really have much of an education specific to maintenance. Most of what I learned was on the job until I started the electrical engineering technology degree at Penn State. But when it came to lubrication, I really didn't have much knowledge about it until shortly before I started getting involved in the lab here. Travis had sent me to get an ICML certification in MLT1. And that was the point that at that point, that was everything I knew about lubrication I learned from that ICML training. Just all the basics, even some more advanced stuff that I imagine a lot of maintenance technicians really don't know anything about. And that kind of got my foot in the door. It got me interested in everything. And then once I took on this role and started getting involved in the lab, I worked with the local lab that Travis had mentioned before. They gave me some on-site training. And then after being in this for about 6 months or so, then I went and got the LLA2 certification as well, which is also an ICML certification. So to be honest, most of the education I got related to the lab and lubrication was completely outside of anything related to college. It's all stuff that you can do just by going and visiting a class for a week and taking a test.
Sure. And I can attest to that as well. So it's definitely having that additional education combined with the engineering or the science degree that helps. So how did you have a MiniLab 53 system, you're using it. So how did you utilize the data? How did you decide what data you were going to be using to implement throughout the plant? And how did your education and your ICML training kind of play into helping you make those decisions?
So when we started using the software, you came along and taught me how to use the software itself, which was obviously very helpful. But as far as really understanding what I needed to look for, as far as setting alarms, knowing when there was actually a problem that we needed to go after, that's all stuff that I learned in the MLT and the LLA course. What we ended up doing was over time, because as Travis had talked about, we have a lot of duplicate pieces of equipment. So we have 36 of this one machine and it has 2 identical gearboxes. So that's 72 of the exact same gearbox. So by sampling all 72 of those gearboxes month after month, you can start to see trends. It helps a lot that we have that really in-depth lubrication program. So I can feel confident knowing what lubrication is in each of those gearboxes. So when I'm comparing them to each other, I know they have the same lubricant, or I know that this group doesn't have the same lubricant, using that as well. The main things that we look at are the particle count, especially for some of our larger gearboxes. That helps us determine whether we can just filter an oil and get more life out of it rather than changing the oil entirely.
Yeah.
We also look at the wear particle analysis that the LNF does from Spectro. That's been really helpful for us because we aren't able to do some of the other wear analysis, but that gives us a quick, easy way of seeing whether there's a potential problem inside that gearbox. So some of our gearboxes we actually rebuild. So that gives us, we send them out to get rebuilt. So that gives us an idea, do we need to schedule downtime on this equipment to get that gearbox rebuilt? We also look at, for those larger gearboxes, especially the oxidation level. I know there's a lot bigger ones out there, but for us, we have 38 gearboxes across our cranes that have about 30, 35 gallons of oil in each one.
Mhm.
Knowing exactly when we need to change it based on oxidation level and total acid number saves us a lot of money versus just doing it on a rigid time-based schedule, which is what the manufacturer of that gearbox would suggest.
Sure. How long do you think it took you to get up to speed to kind of be able to trend that kind of change in the oil?
So I think a lot of it depends on how often you're willing to sample it first, which is one of the benefits of us doing in-house, is that I can say, all right, I want to sample. I could say I want to take a sample of this every single week, and it doesn't cost me anymore because I'm not paying per sample.
Right.
I can do as many samples as I want. It doesn't cost me any more money.
Mm-hmm.
We did it as for about the first year, we would do a monthly sample on those assets till we started to get a real good idea. And we since pared it back initially to quarterly, and some of them we're now doing semi-annually as we started to see that because of the synthetic that we're using, we're not seeing changes quickly enough that we need to do quarterly samples anymore. So
Sure. That's great stuff. And I love how the education part has just kind of intertwined itself and weaved itself into your decision making and how you're using the mini lab system and pushing that data out. Now, I know it's not just you two as part of your maintenance team. So how are you taking the data and kind of pushing that out to the rest of your team and to create that culture, create that buy-in of, hey, this idea of predictive maintenance is working, and really boost the morale of and utilize how you're utilizing the data to show everyone that.
So that's another one of the benefits of us doing it in-house, I think, is that at the same time that I'm running the lab, I'm also the supervisor of our top PM technicians. We have a separate team of PM technicians along with the normal maintenance technicians. So I work with them directly every single day. They're the ones taking the samples and bringing them to me. Anytime I find anything interesting, I can bring them in and show it to them directly. Every single one of them, to at least some degree, understands what we're doing here because I bring them into the office and explain it to them. And
yeah.
I found that maintenance technicians are really interested in this sort of thing. If you really
absolutely, I have found the same thing. They want to know that their work isn't done just for nothing. And I think having them seeing the results of their work is really a rewarding thing. And I'm sure you have found that they do sure get excited about seeing the fruits of their labor.
Oh yeah, definitely. And for us, the way we do it is, so our CMMS system that we use is Maximo, and we have all of our oil samples set up in Maximo as PMs, so they automatically drop along with the normal PMs. So the technicians take the samples for me and bring them back to the lab, and then I obviously track everything within TrueView 360 because it's specialized for that. Mm-hmm. And any issues that I find, any actions that need to be taken, I myself can make a new work order, send it out there, let the planner know and get it taken care of. And then I can track that work order to know when it was done and send someone back out to take another sample. So the whole process is very easy, honestly.
Yeah, and to be able to have that internal control is very powerful. If of course you understand the process and know what you're looking for, and you guys certainly do. So well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to give you both a minute to just say a final word to anybody who is thinking about bringing on-site oil analysis on site. If you could give them any piece of advice, what would it be? Chris, we'll start with you, and then Travis, we'll end with you.
I would say the two biggest things for me would be, one, make sure that you really have a good lubrication system in general. Do whatever consolidations are that make sense to not have such a varied amount of lubricant if you don't need it. Having color code systems for your lubricants, being able to filter it on the way in so that you know it's good when you put it in the machine. I think having all that as a baseline is really important. And then on top of that is go out and get those ICML trainings. They really made such a huge difference for me. I don't think I could do what I'm doing right now if I didn't have that kind of training. It's really complex, complicated stuff, but that training helps it really make sense.
Sure. Travis?
Yeah, a lot of what Chris said there. I mean, it really honestly, being the one that had to bring this into the building when it didn't exist at all, first thing we did is I went out and got my CLS. So like no matter what, by getting that allowed me to go to VPs, EVPs, SVPs, and let them know, hey, I'm a player in this game. We need this because I've been trained on it. I know better. And these processes are where the future is going and how manufacturing has to keep functioning to get more efficient.
Sure.
So the training's hands down, and then you got to have the right machines. I still, after all these years, still think we made a perfect choice of the machines that we got, making sure we can do the chemical stuff immediately, followed by that particle count. Without those two, once again, you just don't even know what you're looking at or where you're starting.
Right.
So make sure you pick the right equipment, make sure you get the appropriate training so that you're at the level that you can bring this into a facility that, a lot of people aren't going to see the value from above because their heads are, usually the above people aren't really working with their hands. So.
Right. And you having those certifications really allowed you to kind of have some credibility, but also learn how to speak their language in order to justify why you wanted to do what you wanted to do. Yeah. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much, guys. It's really appreciated. Everybody is just I'm sure we'll get some questions as far as follow-ups to this, but appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.